On the night of 26 May 2023, the 000 Emergency Center received a call from a woman. Her voice was clear and urgent. Her former partner was in the apartment, trying to take her money, and was attacking her. She managed to give the street address of the building in Liverpool, in southwestern Sydney. But before she could give the apartment number, the line was suddenly cut off. New South Wales police were dispatched to that address about 3 hours later. They knew the building, but not which apartment, and there was no way to identify the exact location of the caller within the building, so they left after searching without success. That night, no one knew what had happened inside that apartment. The following morning, on the 27th May, a second 000 call was made, this time by a man. He reported that a woman was in a critical condition and provided the full address of the apartment. New South Wales police and an ambulance were immediately dispatched to the address provided. When officers reached the building, they were led up to the apartment on the 22nd floor. When police and paramedics arrived on the 22nd floor, the situation inside the apartment immediately made clear this was not an ordinary medical emergency. Once inside, they found a woman lying motionless. Paramedics quickly confirmed she had died and could not be revived. The man who had made the call remained at the scene and was held by officers to assist with the investigation. A child, a boy about 4 years old, was also present in the apartment. The boy was removed from the scene and handed over to Child Protection Services before any further steps in the investigation took place. Officers observed the entire apartment and documented the condition of the scene. No conclusions had been reached at this stage, but it was enough for police to decide to seal off the entire area and treat the scene with the seriousness of a matter requiring thorough investigation. Immediately after assessing the scene, New South Wales Police decided to seal off the entire 22nd floor and related areas of the building. Entry and exit points to the building were tightly controlled. Residents of nearby floors were asked not to approach the sealed-off area. The crime scene examination team was called to the scene immediately. Every corner of the apartment began to be documented, marked, and had evidence collected from specific details, according to standard procedure. The crime scene examination team worked for many hours straight inside the apartment. Every item, every surface, was documented and inspected. Biological traces, fingerprints, and related items were all carefully collected. The absence of the victim's phone inside the apartment was a significant detail. The phone was later found outside the building, directly below the 22nd floor balcony, a location indicating it had been thrown from height, not dropped by itself. There were no signs of forced entry from outside. All the evidence pointed to the incident having occurred inside the apartment, between people who knew each other or had a close relationship. The forensic team carried out an examination of the victim's body at the scene before transferring her to the forensic facility. The results determined the woman died from a brain hemorrhage caused by multiple severe injuries to the head. These injuries were not consistent with an explanation of an accident or a random fall. The extent and number of the injuries indicated they were caused by repeated external force, not something the victim had done to herself or an accident. The forensic team also noted older injuries on the victim's body, indicating this was not the first time she had been physically assaulted. The cause of death was determined to be homicide. Immediately after the forensic results were confirmed, New South Wales Police opened a formal investigation. The victim was identified as Tatiana Dokhotaru, 30, who lived in the apartment on the 22nd floor in Liverpool. The man present at the scene that morning was identified as Danny Zayat, 31, who was also the father of the victim's child, that is, the victim's former partner. In his first interview with police, Zayat gave an explanation, saying Tatiana had been drinking and using drugs and had fallen, causing a head injury that led to her death. He insisted there had been no violence and no argument. However, this account immediately conflicted with what police had already gathered. Security camera footage from the building showed Zayat running out of the main entrance on the night of 26 May, the night before, not the following morning, as he had described. This meant he had left on the night the incident occurred, and only returned the following morning. This was a serious inconsistency, and it made investigators realize there was something wrong with Zayat's account. Investigators immediately widened the scope of the investigation and interviews. Amber Haleta, Tatiana's close friend who lived in British Columbia, Canada, provided police with numerous messages Tatiana had sent her in the weeks before she was killed. In those messages, Tatiana described in detail multiple occasions of being physically assaulted by Zayat. In a message from 13 April 2023, she wrote that she had been dragged by the hair, spat on, and threatened with death if she thought about calling police. And on 1 May 2023, she messaged that her throat was bruised and swollen after being strangled, to the point she could barely breathe. She wrote that she felt humiliated and violated. Tatiana's parents, who lived in Canada, also gave statements about Zayat's behavior during their visit to their daughter in 2022, controlling and threatening phone calls, made even while Tatiana was with her family. Zayat continued to track and control her even when she was visiting family in Canada or on holiday anywhere else. Police also confirmed that in 2022, Tatiana had applied for and been granted an apprehended domestic violence order, under which Zayat was prohibited from approaching or contacting her. Even so, the order did not in practice stop him from continuing to appear in Tatiana's life. Another detail was also confirmed. Inside Tatiana's apartment, there was a large amount of cash, 130,000 Australian dollars, which she kept in a shoebox, earned from her online retail business and renting out a sunbed. After Zayat left, this money was no longer in the apartment. What investigators were now reconstructing was not only the events of the night of the incident, but the life of a woman who had tried to get out, and a man who would not allow that to happen. To better understand what Tatiana Dokhotaru had faced, it is necessary to look back at her life before all this. Tatiana Dokhotaru, also known affectionately as Tanya, was born and raised in British Columbia, Canada. In 2012, as a young woman, she decided to leave Canada and move to Australia, a decision many in her position would consider a brave one. In a new country, with no family beside her, she built a life for herself from scratch in Sydney. Tanya did not work for anyone. She created her own source of income, running an online business through Instagram, selling replica designer goods, and renting out a sunbed inside her own apartment in Liverpool. Hers was the life of a woman who knew how to look after herself. While living in Australia, she began a relationship with Danny Zayat. The two were together long enough to have a son together, but this was also a relationship Tanya gradually realized she could not continue. She tried to end it, and that was when everything got worse. By 2022, she had found the courage to apply for a protection order from the court, but that piece of paper did not change reality. Friends described Tanya as a strong, energetic, intelligent woman who loved her son deeply. She was someone who, even while afraid, never stopped trying to protect her own life. And in that 1-minute 29-second emergency call, the last call she managed to make before the line was cut, she was still trying to save herself. Danny Zayat, 31 at the time of the incident, was an Australian tradesman living in Sydney. He and Tatiana Dokhotaru had a long relationship, long enough for the two of them to have a son together, and long enough for those around them to see them as an ordinary couple. But behind that image was a different reality. Even while they were still together, Zayat displayed clear controlling behavior. He tracked Tatiana constantly, even when she was visiting family in Canada or on holiday in Thailand. His controlling and threatening calls followed her wherever she went. Tatiana's parents, during their visit to their daughter in 2022, witnessed this firsthand. When Tatiana decided to end the relationship, Zayat's response was not acceptance. Instead, the physical assaults began to escalate. Hair pulling, spitting, strangulation, threats. He gave her a black eye. He told her that if she called police, she would be killed. After the relationship ended, Zayat continued sending Tatiana messages with an affectionate tone. On 6 May 2023, just 3 weeks before she died, he wrote that she was the first true love of his life, that he could not love anyone else, that he was simply no good, and that he did not want to keep making her life difficult or getting in the way of her life because of his own issues any longer. But those words stood in complete contrast to what he had done to her throughout the relationship. Later, the judge presiding over the case found that Zayat had an obsessively controlling mindset, and that for people like him, even a court order was not enough to stop their behavior. After compiling all the evidence, New South Wales Police determined there were sufficient grounds to proceed with arresting Danny Zayat. Security camera footage showed him running out of the building on the night of 26 May, in complete contradiction to his account. The forensic findings confirmed the victim died from multiple severe head injuries, inconsistent with an accident. The victim's phone was found outside the building, below the 22nd floor balcony. $130,000 in cash disappeared from the apartment after Zayat left. Messages from the victim to friends documented previous assaults in detail. And the 89-second recording of the 000 call, Tatiana Dokhotaru's own voice, describing what was happening to her. This entire case file was submitted to the relevant authorities. A warrant for Danny Zayat's arrest on a charge of murder was approved. Danny Zayat did not flee after the incident. On the morning of 27 May 2023, about 21 hours after leaving Tatiana's apartment, he returned to the building on his own. When police entered the apartment, they found Zayat beside Tatiana's body, performing CPR. Police body camera footage captured him crying and saying, "I shouldn't have left her. She was very depressed. She was very depressed." He also told police that Tatiana had been drinking heavily, using drugs, and had shown signs of wanting to harm herself. Before the incident, this was the version of events he had tried to establish from the very beginning. His and Tatiana's 4-year-old son, who had remained in the apartment for 12 hours beside his mother's body, was removed from the scene and handed over to Child Protection Services before police began formally dealing with Zayat. Following initial verification, police formally arrested Danny Zayat. He was taken to the police station for questioning. He did not resist, and he did not flee. Zayat went with police without resistance. At the police station, Danny Zayat was formally questioned about Tatiana Dokhotaru's death. He had legal representation throughout the interview. Zayat maintained his position from the start. He did not kill Tatiana. According to him, she had fallen and caused her own injuries. When asked about the $130,000 missing from the apartment, he could not provide a clear explanation. When asked about the phone found outside the building, he also had no satisfactory answer. When asked why he left his 4-year-old son alone in the apartment for so many hours, he said he had panicked. Investigators recorded the entire statement, cross-checked it against the existing evidence, and continued their work. Zayat did not admit guilt. He did not change his position. But it was his own statement, the details of what he said had happened that night, that became something investigators could directly cross-check against what the security cameras, forensic evidence, and witnesses had recorded. According to Danny Zayat's statement, on the evening of 26 May 2023, he went to Tatiana Dokhotaru's apartment in Liverpool. He said the two of them had an argument. During that argument, Tatiana, who he said was drunk and affected by drugs, he described her as unsteady, unbalanced, and showing signs of being out of control. He stated that Tatiana fell and hit her head on a hard surface in the apartment. That, according to him, was what caused her injuries. He denied attacking her. However, this account directly conflicted with much of the evidence police already had. The forensic findings determined Tatiana died from 3 separate head injuries, causing a brain hemorrhage. The number and severity of these injuries were not consistent with a single fall. Security camera footage showed Zayat running out of the building's main entrance that night, not the ordinary walk of someone panicked after witnessing an accident, but a panicked flight after something had happened. Tatiana's phone was found outside the building, below the 22nd floor balcony. The phone did not fall there on its own. Less than an hour before her death, Tatiana Dokhotaru had called 000 herself. In that 89-second call, her voice came through clearly. Her former partner was there and was trying to kill her and was stealing her money. The line was cut before she could give the apartment number. The $130,000 Tatiana kept in a shoebox disappeared from the apartment after Zayat left. This was the same money Tatiana had managed to mention in that emergency call. And the couple's 4-year-old son remained in the apartment, alone, beside his mother's body, for 12 hours, from the time Zayat left until he returned the following morning. Taken together, Danny Zayat's account did not hold up against any of this evidence. After completing the interview, investigators proceeded to compile all the evidence to build the case file. The first piece of visual evidence was the building's security camera footage, clearly showing Danny Zayat running out of the main entrance on the night of 26 May, not long after Tatiana had made her 000 call. The victim's phone, found beneath the building, confirmed it had been thrown from the 22nd floor balcony. The forensic findings confirmed the cause of death as 3 separate head injuries leading to a brain hemorrhage, not an accident. The 89-second recording of the 000 call was kept as key evidence, in which Tatiana Dokhotaru's own voice described what was happening to her at that moment. The history of prior violence was compiled from multiple sources: messages Tatiana sent to friends, documenting assaults in April and May 2023, photographs of the bruising on her neck after being strangled, and the apprehended domestic violence order that had been granted in 2022. The statements from Tatiana's parents about Zayat's controlling calls during their visit to their daughter in 2022 were also included in the case file. The disappearance of the $130,000 in cash from the apartment after Zayat left, money Tatiana herself had mentioned in her emergency call, was noted as a factor relating to motive. And the statement of the 4-year-old son, the only witness present at the scene, was collected under conditions specifically suited to his age. When asked what he remembered, his answer was just 4 words: "Dad was angry." This entire case file was forwarded to the New South Wales Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. Based on the full body of evidence compiled, the New South Wales Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions decided to charge Danny Zayat with murder under New South Wales criminal law. This is the most serious charge in the Australian criminal justice system, requiring the prosecution to prove the accused acted with intent to kill or cause serious harm resulting in death. The prosecution determined that the full body of evidence. The prosecution built its case on the pattern of abuse Zayat had inflicted on Tatiana over many years, not limited to the night of the incident, and his behavior after leaving the scene was sufficient to prove this intent. Zayat had been held in custody since 18 March 2023, while awaiting trial. The trial was set down at the New South Wales Supreme Court, before a judge and jury. The trial of Danny Zayat for murder took place at the New South Wales Supreme Court over about a month. One of the most powerful pieces of evidence was the recording of Tatiana's 000 call, 89 seconds, in which her voice rang out before the jury. Her former partner was there, trying to kill her, taking her money. Security camera footage showing Zayat running out of the building shortly afterward was also shown in court. Images of the bruising on Tatiana's neck, photographed and kept on record, were presented as visual evidence of her history of abuse. Amber Haleta, Tatiana's close friend from British Columbia, flew to Australia to testify. She gave evidence about the messages Tatiana had sent her in the weeks before her death, describing each assault in detail. After the verdict was delivered, she said, "We can finally breathe a little, but that does not change the fact that a beautiful, intelligent woman who loved her son will never come back." Tatiana's parents, living in Canada, also testified about Zayat's controlling behavior during their visit to their daughter in 2022. The most unusual witness in the trial was Tatiana and Zayat's son, by then 6 years old. He was the only person present in the apartment throughout the incident. His evidence was collected under special conditions. When asked about his father, he said, "Dad was angry." The defense, led by barrister Madeline Avenel SC, argued it could not be entirely ruled out that Tatiana's injuries were the result of an accident. The defense also pointed to messages Zayat had sent Tatiana, in which he expressed affection. As evidence, there was no intent to kill her. After several days of deliberation, the jury of 12 returned a verdict of 11-1. Danny Zayat guilty of murder. After the jury delivered its guilty verdict, Justice Desmond Fagan proceeded to consider sentencing. The judge reviewed the accused's full background, the seriousness of the offense, the history of systematic abuse, and the impact of the case on those involved, particularly the young son who had witnessed and lived through something no child should have to experience. Justice Fagan found that Zayat had repeatedly assaulted, tracked, threatened, and harassed Tatiana Dokhotaru, unable to accept that she wanted to continue living her own life. He described this as evidence of a fixed, controlling mindset, the kind that, in his view, is not deterred even by the harshest penalties. On 19 December 2025, Justice Desmond Fagan handed down his sentence on Danny Zayat at the New South Wales Supreme Court. Maximum sentence: 24 years in prison. Non-parole period: 18 years. Earliest possible release date: 17 March 2043. The sentence was backdated to 18 March 2023, the date Zayat was first taken into custody. In his sentencing remarks, Justice Fagan said, "A large, powerful man standing over a small, defenseless woman, asserting his dominance with his fists. That is the image of cowardice and cruelty." Tatiana's mother, from Canada, had once sent her daughter a warning message weeks before she died. "This is not a man. And men like this never stop." An 18-year non-parole sentence has been handed down. Danny Zayat will not be eligible for release before 17 March 2043. But looking back over the whole case, there are still things that leave many questions unanswered. Tatiana Dokhotaru had an apprehended violence order in place since 2022. But Zayat still came back, still attacked her, and in the end, killed her. She called 000. Police arrived at the scene 3 hours later, but without knowing the apartment number, they left. Her 4-year-old son remained alone with his mother's body for 12 hours. So, in your view, was this sentence enough? And across the entire timeline, from the apprehended violence order being granted to police arriving at the scene, was there a point where things could have been handled differently? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Tatiana Dokhotaru did not die because she did not know she was in danger. She knew. She had recorded each assault in her messages. She had applied for an apprehended violence order. She had called 000 in her final seconds. She had done everything people say a person should do, and it still was not enough. The lesson from this case is not just for people in dangerous relationships. It is for everyone around them. Domestic violence rarely happens suddenly. It usually follows a long chain of smaller controlling behaviors, tracking, threats, isolation, that outsiders can easily overlook or explain away with words like, "He is just jealous," or "He loves her too much." And when a woman has found the courage to speak up, to call for help, to seek a protection order, the system around her needs to be ready to listen and respond quickly enough. Because the gap between 3 hours and too late can sometimes be just one missed call. If you or someone you know is in a dangerous situation, even just a feeling of being unsafe, even if nothing has happened yet, do not wait until things escalate. Do not wait until you are certain. Do not wait until it is too late. Call 000 immediately if there is immediate danger, or contact the Domestic Violence Support Line 1-800-RESPECT on 1-800-737-732, a line that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, completely free and confidential. The content in this video was made for the purpose of informing and educating the community. Crime Files All does not condone any form of unlawful behavior whatsoever. All information presented is based on publicly available records and verified news sources.